How's it going for you, Melody?
Good. I'm gonna go take the test tomorrow.
Yes, cool. So tonight,
Yeah,
what
I'm
are you gonna
excited.
do? What are you
I thought I'd go over some math and
Okay.
then just go. I don't
Okay.
think I could do any more. I took your guys's the end of the term or the class tests reviews
Right.
so many times, and then I would go through them again and again and again, and so I'm like, I don't think I can prep anymore. My brain feels packed.
Okay.
So as far as math goes, I feel like that's about what I can kind
Well,
of brush up
tonight,
on.
but before you go to bed, take your ID and the other information you need to get into the exam and put it all together in one spot with your keys on top, okay?
Okay.
Because
Sounds good.
I don't want you getting up tomorrow and saying, okay, it's time to go, and you can't find your keys,
And I wondered how many questions there are on the test. I was going to look it up and stuff, but I haven't had a chance.
Well, as far as it goes for your score, there's 80 on the national and 40 on the state, but you're going to see more questions than that.
Oh,
And
okay.
maybe 3 or 4 or 5 more here or there. And the reason why is because they do something that I'm not particularly excited about, and that is they put on some questions. They put some questions into the test that you don't. And you don't know, they don't identify them, they don't tell you which are which. So, but they're testing the test question. So whenever they rewrite new material, they test the test question for a while to see if it's testing okay. And for example, if a person gets about 70% or 80% right on a test, they want that question to be about the same. They're fair in the sense that they don't want someone who's getting normally 75 to 85 percent right on the questions to only come back at 25% on that question, because for them they figure that's misleading, which is good. On the other hand, they don't want 100% getting it right either, because then it's too easy. So they test the test questions for a while, but the thing I don't like, I like the fact they're testing the test questions. I think that's legitimate, but I think that they ought to identify them at the end of the test and say, would you help us out? Would you take these 5 questions like they were for real? They don't do that because they just think you're just going to mark them all C and walk out of there.
Okay.
But but you're using your time and your energy on something that really doesn't benefit you at all. It benefits future generations of test takers. And I don't know, I don't think it's fair, especially if it's something that kind of stumps you, and you spend 2 minutes on it, and that's 2 minutes you could have used on 4 other questions. So I don't know, but that's what they do. So how many are you going to see on the national? Maybe 84, 85. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, it's usually about 5, sometimes up to 10 of those practice questions that they put in there from each, from general and national.
Yeah, and on the state, you might see a little more than normal because they've just done a whole new question bank so they're testing them all out. So,
as long as they don't fail me for their practice questions.
No, if you get it wrong, that doesn't count against you.
Okay.
But if you get it right, it doesn't count for you either.
Okay.
It just doesn't count. It's just something for them. So, well, welcome everybody. Are we all on, Dan? We got 5. I think
we've got enough people in. Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody. I'm Rick Roller. I will be your game show host for tonight, and working with you on some really important stuff. I mean, the questions we'll be going through tonight are things that like Melanie might see tomorrow. Yeah, okay, Melanie. So this is really pertinent, and I'm excited that you're here. With us tonight, of course, as usual, is Mr. Dan Naylor, our host with the most, and our producer, and the owner of the school, the Institute of Real Estate Education. So, and then there's me, Rick Roller. So here we go. All right, so we're going to jump right into the first question. It's about CERCLA. CERCLA is also known as. Whoops, hey, you gave it away. That's okay. It's also known as a Superfund. It's a federal law that's put into effect to help clean up polluted areas. And sometimes that's called also a Superfund. It's not the Environmental Protection Act. That's another whole law. The Waste Cleanup Act or the Environmental Hazards Control. It's none of those. It's a Superfund to help clean up heavily polluted sites. And a lot of those are back east, but we've had some Superfund sites right here in Utah, one down in Moab area where they used to dump a lot of, do a lot of radioactive radium mining and that kind of thing, uranium mining. And they had mills right there. They would mill a lot of that rock up and whatnot, and then ship it off to other places for further development and concentration and whatnot. But a lot of those sites were right next to the Colorado or on the Colorado River, which is probably not a good idea to have a lot of that radioactive byproduct right there, where when the river floods, it just flows downstream to Phoenix. It wasn't a good idea. So they've recently done a lot of cleanup there in the last 10, 15 years. So that's a good thing. Another one is right here in Midvale. We had a lot of stuff there too that was polluting the old town in Midvale. Okay, next question, please. Which of the following is an environmental hazard based on the decay of radioactive materials? Lead, like lead poisoning? No. Carbon monoxide? Well, that's definitely not a good thing, but that's not it either. C, radon, hold on to that. That's real warm and fuzzy. Or D, mold. Well, the correct answer, of course, is radon. Radon is an odorless, colorless gas that is a byproduct from decaying radioactive materials. It's very common in areas like ours where, it's common in a lot of areas, and when I first started in real estate business in Colorado, I was in Grand Junction. We had a lot of it. In fact, the whole Mesa County area proper, you couldn't sell a house without getting a radon survey done on every single house. And we do have it in Utah. It's odorless, it's colorless. You're not going to know it's there unless you test for it. If you find it, you can mitigate it with ventilation systems. And where it really shows up quite a bit is in basements, particularly if you have any raw or uncovered dirt. Let's say raw, I guess dirt's raw, but whatever. But if you have any uncovered dirt or exposed dirt is what I meant to say, then radon can seep up through those areas, or a lot of cracks in your basement floor and whatnot. It's not a good thing either. It's a good thing to test for. It's an inexpensive test. They put a little box down there and let it sit for a while, and you take it and send it off, and they tell you what the concentration of radon is or is not. And then, of course, our county has different levels that they consider severe or not. But if you find it, you probably ought to fix it. It's not a good thing. You need to get it out of there. You need to ventilate it out. They usually put in a ventilation fan that goes all the way to the basement, sucks it out, and then shoots it out the roof. And that seems to work very, very well. And, it's not too expensive, but, it's something that definitely ought to be looked at. And I would suggest you have your buyers do that. It's just something that they ought to be aware of.
It's interesting. The two houses next to each other on the same street can have very different levels of radon. So it's something you just have to test in every house. You just can't judge it by what's around there.
No, you really can't. And the problem they had in Grand Junction where I was there was a mill there where they would process the radioactive materials. And one of the byproducts of that was this real clean looking sand. And it was just a leftover byproduct, but it was still somewhat radioactive. And people in Grand Junction, Colorado would go to the mill and get all the free sand they wanted, and they use it for backfill around their foundations. It was probably not a good idea. And then later, when you had one of the highest leukemia rates in the state of Colorado, they started to wonder, I wonder why Grand Junction is so bad. And so they had some special money set aside from a fund like CERCLA, but this is a little bit before CERCLA's time. but it was like CERCLA, and they cleaned a lot of that out. But every house in Mesa County had to be tested for radon, and so it's something you got to look at here too.
Are we allowed
Okay,
to ask questions?
Pardon?
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Oh, absolutely. Please do.
Okay, so I'm wondering, doesn't radon cause lung cancer? So isn't that why it's so important? It can cause that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and leukemia is a type of cancer too, like I mentioned earlier, but it can be lung cancer or other types of. It depends on the concentration, but yes, it's not good for your health, and
Yeah.
exactly how it does it or whatever. I don't know. I'm not a medical guy, but I do know that if it's in high concentrations, it needs to be mitigated,
Yeah.
and it's something you should advise your clients to do. And if they decide not to, well, that's fine. That's totally up to them. And as Dan said, a lot of times in our area, the tests do come back negative. But if there's any open soil in that basement, like sometimes people would have a square area that wasn't covered with cement, and they thought that was a good place to dig down and put their potatoes for next year. They were kind of using it like a, some like a root cellar or something. And but it was exposed, to the rest of the house, and that's an area where the gas can get in. And you're not going to know you have it unless you do the test. Excellent question. Thank you. Next question, please. Which of the following contributes to mold growth? Which of the following contributes to mold growth, guys? What do you think? Well-ventilated homes, dry, dusty interiors, lead-based paint? No, I don't think so. How about high humidity? Yeah, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Yeah, that's the correct answer. Well-ventilated homes aren't, I mean, if you keep your home well ventilated, that helps keep the mold down and also keep some of the humidity out of the home as well. Dry, dusty interiors, you don't see a lot of mold problems. And lead-based paint, that has nothing to do with mold. But mold can be an issue too, and particularly black mold is some of the worst, and you can usually smell it. They have different ways of testing for it. And they actually train dogs to come in and sniff for mold. And sometimes the mold can be in the walls. If you've had a plumbing leak in a wall and maybe you've patched it now, but yet you clear around it. Areas that they have a lot of problem are showers over tubs, and there's the sheetrock comes all the way around the back wall, the side wall, and the back wall of the shower. It's not. Maybe it's not tiled, or maybe it is tiled, but it wasn't tiled very well, and there's seepage behind those walls. That, those you have to do some looking on those. And there have been instances where I employed there's several gentlemen in town that have mold dogs, and cute little dogs. They come in, they sniff around, and they kind of point where the mold is, and then you have to do some further research, see how bad it is. Mold can be, it can be remediated. I mean, you can take care of it, you can get it out, but you're probably going to have to do some, sheetrock protection and make sure that the mold and the stud wall has been all taken out. And they have various chemicals that they use, including Clorox and other types of things. They need to clean all that up, but something that definitely needs to be looked at. I think, Dan, don't you have a home inspector class that they talk about a lot of these things on the CE credit side?
Yeah, we have a class called, what's it called? It is the Walk This Way is what it's called.
I put you on the spot. Go ahead and look it up. Let us know later. But it's a good thing to take these kinds of classes, and to digress just for a moment, please understand that you don't have to know everything about everything to get going in real estate and make this profession work for you. You really don't. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be there to work with you as a team. And a good home inspector is one of those people. But on the other hand, folks, take classes. Always be reading and studying and taking classes. And I know, that I know we only renew every 2 years. And I know that, it only takes about 18 hours of CE credit. I understand that. But don't stop there. Take 40, 50 hours of CE credit, for heaven's sakes, especially when you're new, because you want to learn all these things because you're going to be asked.
So
You
a
know, your
question,
buyers and your sellers are going to ask you questions, and you know, you need to come up with an answer and say, gosh, I don't know, but I'll find out is okay on a few things. But you know, if it's every 3 out of 5 questions they ask, they're going to start wondering, you know, why are they paying you $15,000? You know, so
a question about that, Rick?
yeah.
Sorry, I missed introductions. If you want me to, you know, here, I'll come on listening.
Just ask your question, please.
Okay, so as a new realtor, how does someone balance that and configure that, and where do they go for those classes? I understand that if you're part of the association, sometimes that's part of your association.
Okay, when you get started, Andrea, you're going to join the board of realtors. I mean, you don't have a lot of choice. So, well, no, it's all voluntary. You know, yeah, it's voluntary but if you want an MLS key to get in houses, if you want to use the MLS, you have to join the board of realtors, you know. So whichever one that is for your area, you're going to join the board of realtors. And then you're going to join the state association, the national association, okay? Now, when you join the board of realtors, they're going to make you take some introductory classes in order to join the board. One of them is an ethics class, okay? So that's one place where you go. You take your ethics class, you take your board introduction class, and then the boards have a lot of other classes that you can take. Now, the problem right now, of course, with COVID is these classes traditionally have all been taught live, and they're not doing live classes right now. Dan and I recently went down in October, and we did a bunch of live classes for the Iron County Board of Realtors. You know, but they're outlaws and cowboys down there anyway. And they were right in between the point where the governor said absolutely no meetings, you know, and you know, so they kind of slipped in and got it done. And of course we were all, you know, careful about the COVID and whatnot. But the point is that online is pretty much the way to go right now, and there's no finer place to take online courses than the Institute of Real Estate Education. You know, because Dan has tons of classes that you can take. Some of them actually, you know, I mean, you know, that would apply for your ethics class and other things that you need to take from the board. And I think the board is finally putting some things online, including some of the boards now are using some of Dan's classes. I know some of the boards down south and up north are using them.
Nice.
Quite a bit. So, you know, there's what you will find, Andrea, as you get going into business, you're plugged into the National Association, the state, and the local board of realtors, and your name will start appearing on lists that other folks that are offering different types of educational opportunities will get that, and they'll start filling up your email. You're going to have lots of opportunity to take lots of classes, but you ought to be reading things all the time as well. You know, I mean, there's plenty of books on sales. There's other, you know, there's some great books out there.
You have a reading list that you like to share?
Yeah, I've got at rickroller.com. I've got a recommended reading list. This is one of the books I highly recommend. I've been going back through it. It's called Hot Prospects by Bill Good. And Bill is actually a local author, a friend of mine. He works primarily, worked in his career, he's retired now, but he worked primarily with a stock brokerage guys, you know, the guys that sell stocks and stuff, and registered reps. And you know, he taught them how to go from making $1 million a year to making $3 million a year. and he was very well known for that. And he charged, like, you know, if you came to one of his workshops, it was like $45,000. But people did it. They did it all the time because because Bill really knew how to do marketing. And the thing I like about this book is that this one was written after the do not call list law went into effect.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bill talks about how to do database marketing and how to keep a steady stream of prospects Coming to You, and that is a phenomenal book. The other one I'd recommend to you right now, these are the two hot books I'm recommending to you right now. I mean, I've loved Bill's work for many years, and on rickroller.com or on the Rick Roller Real Estate YouTube channel, I actually have Prospecting Your Way to Sales Success, which is it's a Bill Good class that he did for the company I arranged that for, and there was about 100 of us there. But Bill gave me the rights to teach that class, and so I call it the classic Rick Roller series. There's a video on the Rick Roller Real Estate YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and search Rick Roller, you'll find it on there, and I recommend you listen to that one as well. And there's a new book out that I've just found. It was just given to me by a friend about a month ago, and it's called Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents. Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents. And man, I highly recommend that book. That's done by a guy that studies language, and he decided, well, these are the most persuasive ways to say things to people, and then a couple of real estate instructors from back east collaborated with him on making, because his book was Exactly What to Say, but Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents. The three of them kind of worked together, and they put that together. It's a fantastic book. Will help you with your marketing messages. So those are the two right now. I think that I'd recommend. They're inexpensive. They're like $18 each. It's not going to put you back much. And
Thank you for that.
yeah, you're very welcome. Okay. Next question, please. We got 3 out of the way. Okay. If a buyer suspects there's a radon issue in a home they want to buy, what the heck should they do? Well, obviously, they do not need to hire a mechanic. This is the way you do multiple choice testing. You read the stem of the question twice. So if a buyer suspects that there may be a radon issue in a home they want to buy, what should they do? Read it twice, then start looking at the answers. What do you think about hire a mechanic? Yeah, no. Get a home warranty? I don't know. Get private mortgage insurance? Oh, absolutely not. That's crazy. So those two you can eliminate. So it's either A, get the home tested, or get a home warranty. What should they do if they suspect there might be a radon issue? Well, let's put your fears. Let's either validate them and let you know you have a problem, or validate the fact you don't have a problem. They should A, have the home tested. Okay. Pretty simple, huh? But in multiple choice testing, you can usually eliminate 1 or 2 of the answers as garbage answers. And that gives you 50-50 chance on a test that you only need a C- 70% on anyway. You can do this. Okay, let's go to asbestos. Yes, asbestos can be contained through a process that we call what? Ventilating it like we do for radon? No, that's not going to work. Encapsulation. That means, kind of surrounding it, like wrapping it or painting over it, or that's actually the correct answer. Dissolution, you're not gonna dissolve it or get rid of it that way. Or ignition, well, burning the whole house down. I don't think that's a good idea either. So it's B, encapsulation. And Sugar House is so dang hot, and then downtown's hot, and the avenues are hot. Downtown Salt Lake is cool, and people want to live there, and prices are just skyrocketing, and the homes that you could have bought for $600-700 grand a few years ago are now 1.2 million. And it's an exciting place to work and to be. And but a lot of those homes do have asbestos in it, and mainly you see that used in some of the older furnaces that are downstairs, particularly those old coal fire furnaces that have been converted to gas. Probably ought to pull that whole thing out and put in something more efficient. And most homes are doing that now, but a lot of them aren't. And so you'll look down here and you'll see this kind of a white ceramic pasted cloth wrap on pipes, and that has a lot of asbestos in it. So home inspectors are the ones that you should rely on to get to know. And they will do asbestos testing at the here in the county. It's pretty easy to do, but if it's been encapsulated, meaning it's been wrapped with something so that it can't dust, and that's where it causes problems, and it can cause a lot of lung issues, like someone was talking before. Because looking at the next question here. Next question, Dan, please. Asbestos can be a health hazard because it can become what? Saturated, encapsulated. Well, that's how you might take care of it. Fragile. That's the problem. It's not crystallization. It's the fact that it crumbles, and then it fragments, and then it's like if you were in your home and the sunlight's coming through the window, and all of a sudden you can see all these dust particles floating around. Well, you don't want any of those dust particles to be asbestos, and that's a problem. And of course, we used to use a lot of asbestos for insulation in the 40s and 50s, and we used to even have asbestos shingles on the top of a house too. And now, as we figured out that this is probably not a good building material, and we don't use it anymore. But some of these older homes and a lot of schools have had asbestos problems over the ages too. So the correct answer to this one is C, fragile. And
I think it's pronounced friable, which I think I pronounced it wrong a lot. So I apologize.
Friable? Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Friable.
Yeah, put it in a pan and stir it up.
Yep.
with not with your bacon. Okay. All right. Next question, please. Thank you, Dan. Which of the following might indicate an environmental hazard on a property? A covered well. Okay. Discolored dirt around an underground tank. That's suspect. A slanted driveway. There's a lot of slanted driveways. A lack of trees. Probably not. The correct answer here is B, guys. Discolored dirt around an underground tank. Yeah, because it might indicate that that tank is leaking, and it could be a number of different types of tanks. Some tanks are better at others at surviving underground. And I'm looking at a home right now in central Utah. I might buy it. And they have two propane tanks that are buried on the property, then two other propane tanks that are up above ground and exposed. And I've got some guys looking at those propane tanks that are buried, because I'm thinking they may be rusted, and I don't know. That would not be a good thing to have your propane tank leaking underground. So we're kind of looking at that right now. But if the dirt was and the dirt wasn't discolored around it, so it's probably not a problem. But nevertheless, if you see discolored dirt around an underground tank, that could be a tip off. There's a problem there. Okay. Okay. And certainly if for those of you that are going to be getting in and doing some commercial work, these underground tanks, can be a real problem. And we do environmental surveys when you're doing commercial work, and a lot of that involves a historic search of what has been on that property over the years, because back in the 20s and 30s, there may have been a gas station there, and there could have been an underground tank, and a lot of those tanks leaked. And so sometimes you have contaminated soil, and it can be a huge problem. And we'll see a little later in our test questions tonight why. But if you ended up buying a site like that, you could be deemed responsible for cleaning that up. You may have got a great buy on the property. Wow, this is a great deal, till you found out there's a couple $100,000 worth of cleanup work that had to be done. And since you're the new owner, hey, that's your problem now too. So, it can be a real problem. CERCLA Superfund, which is the next question, provides funds for the abatement of. And you say, well, wait a minute, we already had a question just like this. I know, but it's not the abatement of mosquitoes, wetlands, or radon. It's obviously, because of our previous discussion, toxic sites. Now, this is something I want to make you aware of. Here we have two very related questions on the same type of an issue, and we're showing you both. Why do you think we're doing that? Hush falls over the crowd. It's because there's 3,000 questions in the database. Okay. And so some of those questions, there's an algorithm that kind of chooses the exam, and it doesn't choose too many of one or too many of another. Every question has its own identification code. And like, for instance, you're not going to go and see 6 questions on CERCLA, but you might see 1 or 2. But we don't know exactly which one you're going to see. We have a pretty good idea that it's going to be there. And so we want you to see it in its various forms so that you fear no question as you go into that exam, because you've already been kind of exposed to the concept in its various forms. Thank you, Dan, for putting so much work into making sure that our test reviews are right on the money. And Melanie's taking a test tomorrow. Oops, maybe I shouldn't have shared that. But anyway, Melanie's taking the test tomorrow. And so you're going to call every one of us and let us know how you did, right? You better call the school, call Dan anyway, and let him know. Because yeah, she says yes. Okay, great. Anyway, best of luck to you. And you're going to walk out of there saying, that wasn't so hard. That's what I want you to do. Okay. Next question, please. According to the Superfund Amendments and Reauthorization Act, called SARA, the Superfund Amendments and Reauthorization Act, an owner will not be liable for contamination happened before they bought the property. That'd be nice. An owner will be liable for contamination only if they knew about the contamination. An owner will be liable for their own actions, but not for the actions of others on their property. Or what do you think, guys? Yeah, it's D. An owner may be liable for contamination of their land, even though they didn't own it when the contamination occurred. That's why when you're buying commercial real estate, you need to do these environmental surveys. They're normally done by engineers. And a lot of it, like I said, is like they go back and they look at old photographs for that area. And if they see there was a gas station there, then they want to come in and do a little bit more thorough investigation. They might want to do a core drilling where they drill down, they pull out a core sample of earth, and they see if there's any contamination on that property. And you're saying, my gosh, that's expensive. It costs thousands of dollars. Well, yeah, but you don't want to buy a site that needs $250,000 worth of cleanup, do you? I hope not. And some of these areas have been capped. Like we have several areas in Park City that have that they used to use for dumping tailings from some of the mines in that area, and they have high metal content. They have high lead content and all other types of toxic minerals. And rather than digging them all up and getting rid of it, they capped them. So there's, several feet of clean dirt, but in those areas, you don't want to be putting in a garden unless you put in like a box garden, that with roots that don't go down into some contaminated areas. Another area where they've done that was Midvale, where they capped some of the tailing sites that they had there from iron manufacturing and whatnot. And then we have, of course, areas from Provo with the same type of problems. But so guys, this is stuff we live with, and this is stuff that you learn as you get more acquainted with the business. But in Park City that you do disclosures about those areas that have the mill tailings. We know in Midvale we do the same thing in other areas as well. Well, how are you supposed to know all this stuff? Well, you're supposed to take classes. You're supposed to talk to more experienced agents. You're all going to be working for a broker that will that are aware of some of these things and will help you with some of these disclosures. And the seller should know too. And so, they can't hide things either. Okay. All right. Next set of questions, please. Okay. O is buying a home from S. S bought the home when it was first built in 1961. And while the original paint was lead based, they had it all removed and repainted years and years ago. And hang on a second, I'm getting a call here. I'm gonna have to flip it. Anyway, anyway, I'll call them back later. So what happens is O was buying a home from S. S bought the home when it was first built in 61, had lead-based paint. Maybe it was in Sugar House, I don't know. You see, they used to use lead-based paint a lot because it lasted, it covered well, and it lasted a long time. But then they found out that, if you would touch the walls, if you're a young child and than lick your lip, your fingers, or lick the wall, or worse, if paint was peeling off the wall, then it looked good to eat, so they eat it. The lead is very damaging to children. Of course, it can be damaging to adults too, but particularly children. And so they outlawed lead. Now the problem is that there is still lead-based paint available today. It's not for interior use and it's not for residential use, but there's a lot of lead-based paint that is used for commercial use even today. Particularly when they're building bridges that have exposed beams and whatnot, they paint those with lead-based paint because it's super great for stopping corrosion on those steel surfaces and whatnot. So if you're listing a home and you go downstairs and the whole downstairs is kind of a sage green or something, and the owner works for UDOT, he may have brought a 5-gallon bucket of paint home from the depot, and you got to be real careful. So lead-based paint is not used, but it can be covered, and that would be good too. All right, but anyway, you're buying this home, and they took it all out. They tore out sheetrock, or probably even lath and plaster back in those days when that house was built. And they had and they've had several paint jobs since then and have covered everything else. So what is true? The seller does not have to disclose anything about the lead-based paint since it's all been removed. Seller need not disclose anything about the lead-based paint since it's been more than 3 paint jobs since then. Yeah. All right. Okay. Stupid. Okay. S need not disclose anything about the lead-based paint unless O, the buyer, inquires about it. Okay. No. The correct answer, of course, is D. Even if you had a leaking roof and then you fix the roof, but in this case we had lead-based paint. They discovered lead-based paint, and they were paranoid about it, so they had it all taken out. Then they come in with low power X-ray type machines, to see if you have lead-based paint. And there's all kinds of ways they can test for that. But if the house was built back in the very early 60s, 50s, 40s, it may very well have lead-based paint. Now, do you have to tear out the walls? No, you can paint over it, and just as long as it's not exposed, and make sure things aren't chipping and whatnot. And that's typically how we take care of it. Okay. But on the test, you've got to disclose all factors that could be material facts, even though you fixed them and it's not a fact anymore. Okay. Okay.
Hey, Rick, we've got a question in the chat. Andrea was asking how do you balance your professional schedule with your CE? Like, how do you balance how much time you should be studying versus
working? That's one of the great things about your school, Dan. I mean, one of the great things about your school is you can take this stuff online on demand. So if you're taking a 2-hour class online on demand, you can take it on your phone. If you're sitting waiting for somebody, or, someone shopping and you're waiting for them in a car, or you're picking up your daughter after dance class, and, you've got 15, 20 minutes while you're waiting in line with everybody else. You're on I-15, it's dead stop for 2 hours because there's a big, take a class, log on, take some class. But you work it out that way. But the classes that are required to join the board, you're going to have to take them before they're even going to let you, issue your MLS key. Now, that's primarily the introduction class and the ethics class. And then, of course, for your first renewal, you have to take the 12-hour new agent class, which Dan has an online version. And I teach live, usually once a month, but with COVID, it's been a little less frequent. I don't know. I probably won't do one until after the first year, but we will be updating our current class. And these classes change a little bit from year to year, but yet most of it stays the same. But I would recommend you take your 12-hour new agent class, your first quarter, your first 3 months in the business, because it teaches you a lot of things that new agents need to know to keep themselves out of trouble. And if you take mine, it has a whole lot of stuff about how to get going into business as well. I worked hard and was rookie of the year when I started, back when most of you weren't even a twinkle in the eye of your parents. Back in the 70, 78, 70. Yeah. Anyway, 79. But I've developed 8 other rookie of the years and hundreds of other people that have won sales awards, so I know how to get new agents going. So come take mine. It's free. You know, I'm not going to charge you for it. Just say that, you know, you were in the review and I invited you to come as a guest.
You know, if you're working as a real estate agent, since you're basically working for yourself, you determine your own learning schedule, right? So you
Right.
determine how much training you want to do. And so anybody who's their own boss, I think, begins to know that you want to do some kind of learning every week, like at least an hour a week somewhere, where you're reading a book, taking a class, something like that. I would plan on doing something every week to further it, even if it's only 1 hour.
Yeah. You know, there's an old saying in real estate, and that is experience is what you get when you're expecting something else, like a commission. But it fell apart. You didn't get the commission because you didn't know how to keep it together. Or a problem came up that you couldn't solve quickly enough in order to meet the deadlines, and the buyer canceled out of the deal. You know, there's all kind, you know, it's, you know, the best experience you're going to get in this business is this experience you get from people that have been there before you and are willing to share some of the pitfalls. You know, and so you learn through going to classes and other things that you can do, and visiting with other, you know, if you get a chance to talk to a top hitter in your office, don't waste that opportunity kibitzing about the weather or where you're going on vacation in 2 months. Ask them what they did to get started. You know, talk to lots of agents that you admire are successful and copy what they're doing. I mean, come on. You know, it's really kind of a, you know, it's a no-brainer. I mean, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to find out what's working now and go out and do the same things. Okay, we're going to talk about land that frequently floods. And it has vegetation and standing water. You know, it can be all those types of things. Okay, so land that frequently floods or has vegetation and standing water may be classified as environmental hazard, riparian sector, wetland, or an easement. What do you think, guys? What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Dan, I think I've dropped out.
Wetland.
Yeah, wetlands. Okay. Very good. That's the correct answer, wetlands. Well, that's kind of, you know, I mean, if it's wet all the time, you can remember that one. The thing about wetlands, though, is really the next question that comes up as well quite often. There's two, go ahead and bring up the next question, Dan. There's two different things you need to be concerned about here. Yes, wetlands can't be built on, you know, so that's going to be a problem. And so the distance between the wetlands and buildings on a parcel of land containing regulated wetlands is called no build, no fly, a safety, or a buffer. It's called a buffer. And buffer zones are zones where they're trying to do organized, beautified types of developments. And so what they do is they create these buffer zones. Like a great example of a place where they should have done more buffer zones is North Salt Lake. You go up to North Salt Lake on the west side of the freeway and you see a lot of refineries there. And then outside the fence at the refinery area, there's a street, and then across the street, there's houses. Very poor planning, you know, because refineries stink and they've got noxic fumes, and they have activity all night long, and, you know, they have noise and
You know, we had one
smells
incident with the refineries here. I live in Bountiful, but the refineries here by North Salt Lake,
yeah.
They actually had an explosion on site, and the shock wave of the explosion went out and broke windows in all the neighborhoods around it. So
Yeah, see, those neighborhoods never should have been there.
right, shouldn't have been that close.
They should have had a buffer zone. So what would you put there rather than putting residential neighborhoods, you know, within 30 feet of a refinery? You know, a much better thing to have would have been like more commercial buildings, warehousing. And then a further buffer zone would have been like high density residential, like apartment buildings. And then on the other side of that, you put your single family homes. And so, you know, you're half a mile away or so, and makes much better sense. But they didn't have that type of effective zoning back then. So it's a buffer. Also sometimes called a buffer zone on the test. Okay, next question, please. The latent defect can be seen by any reasonable walkthrough, a latent defect. This is something that's hidden. B, might not be discovered by a regular inspection. That's warm and fuzzy. Keep that in mind. C, is illegal. How could it be illegal or not illegal? It's just something that's wrong with the house. Can never be repaired. Well, obviously, most things can be repaired, even if you have to take a roof off and replace it and things like that. But obviously, the correct answer here, guys, I hope it's obvious, is B, might not be discovered by a regular inspection. That's a latent defect. And there are things that the seller may know. They're supposed to put this in their property condition statement, and let people. You're not supposed to hide things that could be considered a material fact. That's anything that could affect the value or someone's motivation to purchase that has a value attached to it. And if you discover them, then you have to disclose them as well. Even though the seller tells me not to, well, we've got something on that right now. Next question, please. If a broker is representing a seller of a property that has environmental hazard, they must what? Notify the buyer that the property cannot be sold? Oh man, there's such a shortage of houses now, almost anything can be sold. It's just how much is it going to cost to fix it. B, notify the buyer if they have any knowledge of the hazards. That's a good one. C, not disclose anything to the buyers as it is a stigma. Or D, prevent the seller from speaking with any buyers. Okay, yeah, all right. Obviously, the answer to this, guys, is B, notify the buyer if they have any knowledge of the hazards. If you know, other people have got to know. And so you make sure they're in the seller disclosures. You make sure that the buyer gets a copy of the seller disclosures, give it to the other agent, make sure that the buyer gets it. How do you do that, by the way? Well, there's a place on the property condition statement that the seller uses to disclose repairs that they've made or other problems that the property currently has. And then there's a place on that form in the bottom on the last page where the buyer can sign that they received it. And so you give this to the other agent who brought the buyer to the deal, if assuming there's two agents. And then they take it to their buyer, they deliver to the buyer signs it, and then you have the other agent give you a copy of that signed property condition statement, and that's how you know that the buyer was informed. Now, are there problems with the system? Well, I guess a dishonest agent could falsify the buyer's signature and things like that, but we don't have much problem with that. I mean, if we do, that agent usually is knocked right out of the business. I mean, someone's that blatantly dishonest. So that's how we know. We know they got a copy because they signed they got a copy. And just make sure that the seller disclosures are complete. And if you find out things later, then do an amendment to the disclosures. Okay. If you're in a situation where you find out things on your own, or you find out that the seller's been a little bit dishonest, or maybe they forgot and then they remembered something and whatnot, and maybe it's past the deadline for the buyer's due diligence, all these sorts of things can happen in deals, not very often, but if you get into a situation like that, you run right into your broker and you sit down, you let them know what's happening, and then together you and your broker will work out a solution to that problem. You may end up giving the buyer some additional time on the disclosure because they didn't have a chance to cancel the deal because of that. You got to make it fair for everyone. But if you find out about things, even if it's like towards the end of the transaction, you got to let them know. I mean, it's whatever everyone needs to know. And so if you find out things as you go through the transaction, I mean, the things I worry about a lot is out-of-town owners. I used to target them. I would target out-of-town owners, particularly in hot market areas. And like I would go through and I would have a title company. And then later on, there was databases that were available of property owners. And I would do searches looking for people that owned a property in, let's say, Sandy, but yet they lived in Long Beach, California. And then I would contact them and tell them what's happening with their property and what's happening with the market, and keep in touch with them and send them updates, and always asking them, do you want to sell? Do you want to sell? Do you want to sell? and then I'd get those buyers, but see those sellers. But then I was also very concerned about, see, they hadn't seen the property in like 4 or 5 years or 3 years or whatever, some period of time. They hadn't lived there. So I required all of them to do the property inspection, and also provide the buyer with a home warranty as well. And that would cost the seller about $1,000. And I told them it was the greatest lawsuit insurance they could ever get, and then they didn't want to do it. Well, maybe I wasn't interested in selling your property. Because if they can't, I mean, if you pass on a seller condition statement, says, I don't know, I haven't even seen the house in 5 years, that's not good enough. I mean, someone's got to do a property inspection, and some buyers don't want to do them because they're expensive. They're $400 or $500, sometimes more. And but I think it's $1,000 out of the seller's pocket. I mean, a lot of times they inherited this house, they got it free and clear. And to sell it and think you're okay and then be sued by a buyer down the road, and you're going to be part of that lawsuit. You don't want that in there. You want to be pulled into that. So, that was always my policy, and most of them agreed. And the ones that didn't agree, well, at least I got them to do a home warranty. And then I strongly recommended the buyer or the buyer's agent that, they need to get an inspection. Okay, fair enough. Some deals fall apart because of that, but only the deals that should fall apart. Okay, because if you have a buyer that's not willing to take on the responsibility of fixing that property, then you don't want them anyway. They're just going to be a problem down the road. You want someone that says, oh, okay, well, let's negotiate a little bit of a compromise on the price or something to accommodate part of that or all of that repair, and so you negotiate and you make the thing work for everybody, and you don't have any problems. And that's how you get referrals. You anticipate problems that can occur and you fix them in advance, and it's not a problem. Okay, let's keep going. All right. G, selling your property as is. Okay, well, I mean, all of our contracts are as is, pretty much. They have instructed their broker not to disclose several defects in the property. Well, we've already mentioned this. That's a real no-no. Hey, Rick, you can list a property, but you can't tell anyone that there's a leaking roof or there's this or that. And no, the correct answer here, guys, obviously is A, the broker must disclose all known defects. And when we're talking about broker, we're talking about broker or the agent. I mean, your broker, in most cases, they're not ever even going to meet your sellers. I mean, but the listing belongs to the broker. But you and the broker, you're kind of, broker means you are the agent. It's the same thing. The broker must follow G's instructions and avoid disclosure. Heavens no. Defects need not be disclosed. If the property sold as is, heavens no. And the broker cannot take a listing for an as is property. That's something you have to talk about your broker, but that's, you can take an as is listing, but you've got to be very careful about it. And but obviously, if they know there's problems and they're telling you not to disclose them, that's not known. That is known. It's known by you and it's known by the seller. And so you have to do that. Most listings we take are as is. I mean, after the seller disclosure period is over, it's been open for a while now, it's closed, and so it's over. The buyer's buying the property without further warranties from the seller at all. Okay, a stigmatized property is a property has latent defects, has blatant defects, okay, has no physical defects, but is avoided because of other reasons, and D, cannot be sold. Well, the correct answer here is C, guys. Has no physical defects, but is avoided for other reasons. Stigmatized properties could be properties that someone died of AIDS there, or they died of COVID there, or someone was murdered in the house, or there was other problems that happened with that house, and it's become somewhat stigmatized. One of my agents sold a property in the mouth of the canyon area. It's a beautiful home, but the lady that lived there had passed away in the house, had kind of fallen. I think that contributed to her death, but she died, and the neighbors noticed After about a week or so, papers were piling up in the driveway. She hadn't been collecting her mail. She wasn't, plowing the snow and taking care of things. So they knew something was wrong. And so they knocked on the door. There was no answer. They peeked in the garage. Her car was there. They called the police, and they came out and found that she had died several weeks earlier. And actually, her body was a little bit decomposing in the home. And the heirs of the property wanted to know if my agent had to disclose that. And the answer is, we have a law in Utah put on the books because primarily Al Mansell, who was president of our Utah Association and also national president of the National Association of Realtors, and a very long-term legislator in our state, the president of the Senate and whatnot. And Al pushed a law through that says that items like that, things that stigmatize a property, someone died in a property, horrible murder occurred there, or someone died of AIDS or other types of problems in that house, cannot be considered a material fact. Now, what do you mean cannot be considered a material fact? Because the law says it cannot be considered a material fact. Therefore, it does not have to be disclosed. So the answer that my agent Tim gave to the seller was, no, you don't have to disclose that because we have a law that says that we don't. However, if you want to use me on this transaction, you have to disclose that because that's the way I roll. I'm not going to lie to someone and tell them something I know about the property because as soon as they buy that property and move in, all the neighbors are going to run over and they say, oh, wow, they really cleaned this up good. Well, what do you mean they cleaned it up? Well, the former owner died and was decomposing right on that hallway right there. Well, okay. Can he do anything legally against you? No, but they're going to make their mission in life to destroy your life and your real estate business. They're going to see your sign on a house and they're going to pull over and go knock on the door. You know what this agent did to me? Anyway, you don't want that. So you decide how you're going to do it. Do you have to do it? No, you don't have to do it, but you might want to do it because you have to deal with the cards that you've been dealt with. And they sold it to a couple from New York, and they were happy that my agent Tim was so forthright and told them. And 3 years later, they're selling the house to go somewhere else, and they called Tim and listed it with them. They didn't list it with the agent that sold them the house. They liked Tim because he was so honest and straightforward. So anyway, that's 9 yards about that. Okay, when a sales agent is showing a property to their buyer client, okay, and they notice an encroachment on the property. Now, encroachment is an illegal trespass on a property. This shows up, it may show up, in a property that has like people are driving through the backyard or something. You're not quite sure, was that an alley or is that the property owner's, what should you advise the seller about an encroachment? Well, require the encroachment to be removed before closing. I don't know. Not to submit an offer. I don't know about that either. If they love the house, consult an attorney before making an offer on the property. That's always the safe answer, isn't it? And it's the correct answer here. Leave the property immediately. I don't know. An encroachment is an illegal trespass. It could be a fence that was built 2 feet onto your ground by mistake. It could be other things. It could, if you're selling mountain land, it's very common, if you're selling a 40-acre parcel and you see a well-used dirt road right through the middle of everything, and you're it's not shown as a county road or anything on the map, and you're asking the owner, well, what's the deal on that road? Oh, it kind of leads up to a lake on the other side of the hill, and people have been using it for years. Well, if they've been using it for years, if it's 21 years, it could be an easement, by prescription. In other words, there could not be put into place, but they could have a lawsuit later after you bought it and then blocked it off. And you may up ending giving someone an easement by prescription through that property because of a long-term encroachment. So obviously that's why they need to talk to an attorney. Okay, because an attorney is the only one that could give them legal advice about how to remove that encroachment or how that encroachment might affect the title of that property. Not you, not an agent. You're not licensed for that. Attorney is. Okay, next question. Okay, you've got a lead-based paint disclosure on a deal in your file. How long must your broker keep those records? And the answer is, out of these, 3, 5, 2, or 1, which one do you guys guess? That's right, Melanie. Boy, you're really ready for tomorrow. It's 3 years. It's 3 full calendar years following the year of the transaction, more specifically. 1, 2, 3 full calendar years following the year of the transaction. Okay, so as we approach past the middle of November, we have December, and then we have a new year. Okay, so if you had a closing this month in November, your broker would have to keep it for the rest of this year, and then 01, 02, 03, 3 full calendar years following the year of sale. So if you had something that if you had something that closed in January, February of next year, it's all of that next year plus 3 full calendar years after that. So it's almost 4 years in some cases. In some cases, it's just a little over 3 years. Okay. Okay. Other questions you may have about other topics tonight? Now is your chance to participate, guys. And when you come to these on Tuesday nights, you're always welcome to ask questions about any topic or getting into business or anything else.
Hey,
I don't
Rick,
do advice to the lovelorn, but go ahead.
do you have like
Larry.
a cheat sheet? Thank you.
Do I have what?
Do you have a cheat sheet of the mathematic formulas that we can have or use for, just so that we can get familiar with it?
I'll have Dan answer that question. Because yes, we do, but go ahead, Dan.
So in the textbook that comes with the course, there's a math section at the back, and the first few pages of that math section are all the formulas for the math, and then it goes through a few specific examples. So that's a good place to look up all the formulas, and then you can try them out on some of those questions.
Okay, Melanie, are you pretty good at math? You're muted.
I said I am. I'm actually all right with math.
Okay, good.
The one thing that makes my brain kind of melt is when it talks about mills. No.
Mills?
Meats? No, mits. No.
Mill levy, taxes?
It's a way of, oh, I forget. I've
Okay.
screenshotted them and I was going to go over them, but it's
Okay.
like mits or meats or
Meats
Oh,
and
meats
bounds.
and bounds?
No, it's a math term. It's one of your math things. It's something I never heard of. I'm all, hey, it's a new language.
Okay, a mill is used in taxation, and a mill is decimal point 001. So 1 mil is 1/10 of a cent. And so if the mill levy is 30 mils, it's 0.030, because 1 mil is decimal point 001. So 30
So
mils.
I just need to connect that.
Okay.
So that makes
Okay.
more sense to me.
Okay, on the topic of math, okay, most of your math is going to be on the national portion of the test. You'll probably see about 8 questions. Okay, the great thing about math is you can work them backwards. But I will caution you that most math questions on the exam are 2-steppers, which they will give you figures, but you have to manipulate those figures to get the real figure you need in order to do the question. For example, they'll give you a monthly expense when what you need is an annual expense. So you take that monthly expense, make it annual, okay, and then you have the number you need to calculate the question, okay? Because all rate of return, cap rate type problems are always annual, 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 annual. They're all annual. Okay, and so they'll give you quarterlies, they'll give you monthlies, and you need to make everything annual in order to calculate the appropriate rate of return.
Okay.
But obviously on a test where you need to get a good solid 70%, and there's 80 questions, you could miss 24 questions and still pass the exam. So you could miss every math problem on the test and be just fine. But I suggest you really, work on the math questions, because those are 8 you can get for dang sure. There's a definitive answer. And, so, you'll usually see a cap rate problem. Dan, what are some of the other, there's usually a problem concerning converting square feet into an acreage. So you have to know that it's 43,560 square feet in an acre. You have to know that a mile is 5,280 feet. Know a few of those things. You're going to be good. You'll be fine. Don't spend 3 hours working on math tonight for only 8 questions. Okay, just do a quick review and do the best you can. And you can always take your right index finger and put it on the screen of the test machine and rub it up and down between A and D, A and D, A and D. And you rub it really fast, and pretty soon one of them's hot because of friction. And that's the correct answer 25% of the time. Okay?
What?
Always works. It's the correct answer 25% of the time.
They're watching me rub on the screen. They come over and sell me. Okay.
They'll definitely have to sanitize the machine for COVID. That's for sure. That was a joke. Don't rub the screen. Don't lick the screen. Don't kiss the screen. Okay, whatever. Hey, thanks so much for being here, folks. We do these every other Tuesday. We got 2 more this year, right, Dan? And then we're going to probably reevaluate where we're going in the future.
Yep.
We've recorded all these, so we have these on demand, online, so as part of your review. Really care about you guys. Don't be a stranger. Once you pass the test, make sure you call into school and let us know how you did. And come take some CE classes. Would love to work with you in a class. So take care.
Okay, thanks everyone. Appreciate you being here. Hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks. Good luck on your exams if you're testing before then, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry, and thanks for your question.
You bet.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you, Dan, for your
You're very
live
welcome.
seminar.
Yep, thanks for being here.